Okay, there we go. And I've already set in the participation options for you, so you should be able to have open chat. And so let's go ahead and start digging into our program for this evening. So the first thing I want to remind you is that for today we're going to have our guest lecturer with us. We're thrilled to have Theresa Lynch, who is a Senior Library Manager of Collection Development for Wake County Public Library, and so that's going to be awesome. She'll be speaking to the class shortly. Presentation Group Team F, you are up next week, so sometime this coming week before Thursday, hopefully maybe Wednesday by lunchtime, someone from the team can send me a link to your presentation slides. That way I'll be able to include in the course module, okay? And I believe the vast majority of the teams have turned in their projects for Part C, Project C Part 1. So that's the home page with all of the other LibGuide pages associated with it. I saw the academic one, was very pleased. The public library one, wonderful job. So I still need to take a look at the special library team's project, but overall, excellent work. Thrilled to see how you've all been able to bring those together, and so that the resources that you selected for your LibGuides that you're recommending to patrons, that they have a purpose and a function that supports the entire library. That is part of your model. So just on a side note, we are heading into the portion of the class where we're going to really think about library marketing tools and resources for the collections that we're developing, and how we can promote those resources to meet the needs of our library patrons and customers. As we learned when we were doing our environmental scan and our needs assessment for the library, we had a very clear understanding of the needs of our community and the needs of our patrons. So with that understanding, we were able to make selections through the LibGuide process, building our mini collections that address those needs. Well, now that we have those resources in place, that we've allocated funding for it, let's take a look at, we're going to take a look at the marketing aspect of it. And so that's where we're heading. And then finally, the last thing is our last project is really taking a futuristic look at collection development and a modeled approach. We're going to think about a 5-year plan. And so that's coming up soon, and we're going to really spend time next week focusing on how we can kind of forecast what a collection development plan might be in that regards. Okay? So I'm going to quickly bring up the chat to see if there's any questions presented to the group, and then we'll move on from there. So give me just a moment. Okay. All right. Excellent. So it looks like we don't have any open questions. So at this time, I'm going to go back and so Theresa, I'm ready to turn over the program to you. So I'm going to I'm going to make you a presenter. So you should be seeing the controls come to you. So if you want to try out your mic there, and whenever you're ready, just go ahead and share your screen if that's something you want to do.
Okay. Can you hear me?
You sound great.
Wonderful. Okay, this looks a little different. So let me just, oh, here. There's the share the desktop. Okay, groovy. And now how do I show me, or can you just see me?
Well, we can hear you, and so I don't even...
Is that cool? Is that enough?
Yeah. We don't have to see you unless you want to turn your webcam on.
Oh, come on. You want... No, I'm joking. How do I turn that on?
What you would need to do is
Sorry.
There needs to be a
oh, start my video. Duh.
Yeah,
there it is. See, trial and error. There we go.
You
awesome.
Did it. Great.
Yay. All right. So I will start. I do have a PowerPoint to talk along with as well. But I just wanted to thank you very much for the opportunity. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I wish I could hear more about what brings you to this library course and your lives in general, because I find that part the most fascinating, all the paths that lead to where we are today. So like Professor said, I am a senior library manager for Wake County Public Libraries, and so what I hope to bring to you today is an opportunity to share with you how we do things at Wake County, and hear your thoughts and questions about that. So I am very informal, and I hope that works well with what you're looking for today. So right now I'm going to do this whole share desktop thing. Let's try that. Groovy. You see it?
Yep, we see it.
Sweet. And I'm loud enough, yes?
I hear you good.
Okay.
I think most of the other students can probably hear you.
Okay, cool. Well, make it like really clear.
Okay, everyone is.
Oh yes. Oh, there it is. Oh, thank you. I'm getting really excited about this.
Yeah.
All righty. I have young children. You can tell. I get really animated. So anyway, so here we are. So really, I just really wanted to start off with this. Has less to do with your class specifically, but more to do with your career generally. And it's how I got here, and why it's important, because what I want to make sure you know is that, you're taking these courses, this core curriculum in your program, but don't let that either limit your thinking or put you in a box too soon, because as you'll see, what I'm doing now is not at all what I expected I would do when I started my library career. So just briefly, the journey has many paths. I did not go to library school to be senior manager for collection development. I did not complete my master's paper on a collection development topic even. I did go to Carolina. I went to Carolina. I went from 94 to 97. And that was a very interesting time, because that was right when the internet was moving from text-based to graphics, and it was a really fantastic time to be on the ground level. I did spend the first 12 years of my library career managing IT, and actually 14 if I count the first library I went to. I actually started at Iredell County Public Library in Statesville. I was there for 2 years. I was basically a systems librarian. I did the LIS system. I did a little reference and a little ILL, but then I also basically fixed all the PCs they had there at the time, and that was from 98 to 2000. When I came here to Wake County, it was specifically to be the IT manager. I managed the help desk staff. We had several hundred computers, both public and staff at the time. And so really my role here for the system was very much a supporting role, and not at all a traditional library role in terms of content. But it was great. I enjoyed it while it was there. This is something I can't express to you enough. Oh, thank you, Erica. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that. Sorry. I do seek out the smart people who want to share their smarts with me, because there are so many people that are in this organization that are smarter than I am in different ways. Developing the sense of who wants to help you and who really doesn't want to help you is a very important skill for you to develop. Life in general, but certainly when you want to advance your career, you will be able to find the people that want to share their smarts with you. Stick close to them, do for them as much as you can do to learn the wealth of experience that they have, and always foster those relationships. That's a very important thing to remember. And truly, courses like this are wonderful and great because it does give you a baseline knowledge of what's going on. It introduces you to the vocabulary that's used and sort of the overall goal of things like collection development. But my word, I did learn the vast majority of my current job while on the job. And that wasn't through really structured classroom format either, which I really actually do prefer. A lot of it was it was entirely self-led, mostly through exactly baptism by Darn Tootin. A lot of reading, a lot of management books, a lot of reading online, seeking out people, going to conferences, paying for them on my nickel, if at all possible, because you can't go everywhere all the time. There's lots of people that want to go to conferences, but be patient with yourself. Find those smart people, connect with them, give them something, offer them something as well, and just know that it's a lifelong process in getting to know your job for sure. I have made a lot of mistakes. I believe I've owned up to most of them, but mistakes are not earth-shattering if you graciously recognize that they are mistakes and try to make them right. But don't expect things to be, completely mistake-free ever. And I do love to learn. I love things like this, but I am, like I said, I'm really kind of informal. And so if you seek someone with, correct grammar and sentence structure, I'm very sorry. But hopefully you'll still be able to hang on with me as I share a couple of things with you. So here, we're going to cover it. We're going to cover Wake County Public Libraries. This is my view of the world for Wake County Public Libraries. It probably varies by whom you speak with, although we definitely have a lot in common, certainly with the senior management and administration. I love my job. I wouldn't want any other job ever. It provides a lot of opportunities to learn a lot of great things and work with some amazingly talented people. So just an overview, because I realize you all have been talking a lot with or hearing a lot from other people in other library systems, as well as vendors, etc. So I did want to make sure that I expressed to you what makes Wake County and unique, because it is a little different than probably the vast majority of library systems in this state. If you're from another state, this might be a little more familiar to you. But we are big. I think for a while there, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and we were kind of vying for population. I believe we still are kind of jockeying, but we're well over 1 million residents now, and believe it or not, we still are building libraries. It's kind of incredible. We did have a bond passed in 2003 and 2007, and of course, because of the economic downturn that occurred right after 2007, those got put on hold, but they were not squashed completely because the public voted for them. And so we are currently continuing to build and renovate and expand libraries. We currently have 22 libraries. One of those is a local history library. I will not be talking about their collection development because they do such a amazing and very specific niche collection that they deserve something all on their own. They're fabulous. One bookmobile and one library administration building. That's where I'm at right now. That's where my office is. It's not a public building, and we do not have a large downtown library, and I'm very happy about that. Downtown libraries can be very tricky to manage long term, for sure. We can talk about that one later if you want to. We are not independent. We are not outside of the county. We are a part of county government, and even further, we are not even our own department in Wake County. We are within the, it's called Community Services. That's the department, and then the libraries are within Community Services, along with Parks and Open Space, GIS, Inspections and Veteran Services. It's a bit of a grab bag. Most of the time, this is a wonderful thing because there are a lot of people with a lot of expertise that help the libraries on a regular basis. But it can limit the flexibility. If we want to try something new that's perhaps really kind of edgy or cutting edge, we have to jump through a few more hoops. We have to get a little bit more vetting up to make sure that everyone's, cool with it. So, yeah, we have a demanding clientele. For you all that perhaps know Wake County, I think Durham County to the extent also, we've got a lot of people that work in RTP. We have a lot of people with advanced degrees, And this is wonderful because a lot of these people use the libraries and then have families and bring their children to use the libraries. However, this also means that probably on a daily basis we get suggestions from people on how to, you know, build our software, run our business, and just improve things, which again is fine. I think we do a good job continuing that dialogue with them. But nevertheless, also being such a populated county, there's a lot of competition for things. You know, kids in their sports, you know, just tons of stuff. So we're just one of the attractions in Wake County. Like many public library systems, large and small, we have that divide. You know, if you draw a diagonal line going from the northeast to southwest, everything north of that is closer to RTP. It's where you have the advanced degrees, where you have larger homes, smaller lots. And then if you go to the south and east, then that's where you still see farming communities. You see some of our smaller municipalities like Wendell and Zebulon, and they have a different socioeconomic mix. And so we just have to be aware of that. These are all Wake County taxpayers. We have to serve all of their needs, and that can be tricky, but that's not unique to us for sure. And this is really important to note, and I want to make sure I express it well enough so that it is not taken as an offense. We run our library system like a business. And I make a statement as this is not a bad thing when it comes to money. I really feel that we do ourselves a disservice when we want to focus only on the art of libraries. We have amazing people. I have a group of selectors and managers and public services staff that do an amazing job delivering library service, selecting library books, etc. But my job is not that job. My job is to ensure that the money that we receive from our funding authorities is spent properly, it's completely transparent, and that we have processes in place to catch things so that we don't wind up, you know, heaven help us, in the newspaper with, you know, they're throwing away books or, you know, a variety of other things. They're not buying a great collection, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really important that as you're learning here in class and as you move out into your career, wherever that may lead you, is that having a business model mindset is not a bad thing. It's actually, when done correctly, and there will be friction, but when done correctly, it really, really allows librarians to do the jobs that we went to school for, and it allows other people that have, you know, accounting backgrounds and all these other kind of backgrounds to do what they do best for your taxpayers. So there's my little spiel on that one. So I'm going to keep rolling. If I don't see anything come up, I'm just going to keep on rolling, but it's kind of funny just to talk to my screen and not hear anyone, but that's okay. I'll get used to it. So let me give you some big numbers, because, you know, everyone loves a big number, right? Yes, this is our big, oh, good, thank you, Allison. This is our book budget, and I realize that you all are probably, some of you might be going, good God. Did I still separate incorrectly? I think I did. Did I? Anyway, that's all Wake County tax, local taxes. Oh, okay, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, it's 4.8 million, I know, and that's just the book budget. I know, we are very, very fortunate to be in Wake County. We do not, Wake County government has this agreement with all of the municipalities in Wake County. That's Raleigh, Cary, Wake Forest, Knightdale, Garner, Morrisville, you know, all those places that if they want a library in their community, that we work with them to build the library. They definitely participate in that regard. They have to provide the land and some of the capital money to buy it. But any library that's in Wake County is run by Wake County. And I do think that's a good model to follow. It wasn't always this way. I think back in the 80s was when our former director really started to bring them together into a more cohesive library system, so that it does simplify things for sure. We don't have to answer to a bunch of different groups for budgetary purposes, it's just Wake County. Just because of our size and you know, I'll face it, our affluence in comparison with other counties in North Carolina, we really don't rely on state funding for our book collection. If we get state funding, we appreciate it and we kind of put it to different places, but it's really not something that we rely upon. Unfortunately, we don't have to. Our collection size, and this is our circulating books, and this is not e-content either, this is not local history, this is not reference or anything like that, is approximately 1.5 million items. I'm going to put in another slide here. Before this one, when you're going to gasp again, we circulate north of 10 million items a year, and we're quite happy about that. We only circulate printed books, books on CDs, ebooks, and e-audio. We have never collected and circulated movies or music. Yep. Or Hoopla. Or Canopy. And we do live to tell the tale. It is interesting. So here's the deal. With Hoopla and Canopy, I can definitely see an opportunity, and I'll get into it later when I talk about the book budget and how we had to be very, very strategic in what we decided to purchase during the economic downturn, which you're like, what? It happened in 2008. It started in 2008, and the county government has a tendency to really lag. So the economic impact of that downturn really only started to turn around 2015-ish, 2016-ish. So you have to be incredibly, when you're in crisis mode, as we were, you have to be very strategic in what you fund. You got to make sure it's sustainable. You've got to make sure it represents and reinforces your core mission. And for Wake County, as I went back to that other slide there, we're still building libraries. It is very important for us to continue to have relevancy that people are walking in our doors. For example, I don't have these numbers for you, but I could get them for you for later if you'd like. We really tie our collection to what we call our program of service, and we focus heavily on children here in Wake County. We've got a lot of them. We've got a lot of families that come here. And so because of that, our collection reflects an idea that, you know, our children and our families are coming in for story time, and they're going to be checking out books to take with them to go. And that we couldn't veer from that. It was very important, because if we went ahead and decided to, just for numbers' sake, well, let's just offer movies. Well, what happens when the budget is cut? Your ability to say, this is the value we bring to our community, and this is what makes us unique and important. It really, you're up a bit of a creek there, because then you're talking about, well, yeah, they could get it in Redbox, really, you know, or, you know, Prime's now streaming. You know, we have tended to stay away from that. That's not to say that we will always stay away from that, particularly like Hoopla and Canopy. Like, well, I'll just tell you now, the movies and music, you know, the actual, you know, DVDs and such, oh my God, no. And I'm so glad we don't circulate them, because you want to talk about a nightmare? Oh, good, Jared, I'm glad. We love story times too. Do you know we have 140 programs for the young child alone from age 0 to 5, 140 programs each week. We love story time, sorry. Back to the device, the format. My God, if any of you have worked in a public library that offers movies and music, holy cow, those are so hard to keep up with. We have just even a hard time with the books on CD. I mean, you get it all, you know, get it brand spanking new, and the first person out scratches it, and you're like, wow. So we're very happy that we didn't get into that market. Now, Hoopla and Canopy, if I can make sure that the budget is stabilized, and if I can create a case that says, well, you know what, Canopy has Criterion, has the Criterion collection. They've got an amazing documentary collection. This is something that will really enhance our program of service, our adult program of service, and even our youth program of service. You know, that wonderful documentary Resilience that talks about, you know, the impact, you know, the post-traumatic stress disorder on children. That's there on Canopy. That would be a phenomenal movie to make available to people while promoting our program of service as well. So while I say we don't have these things at present, it's not to mean that we're never going to, but you definitely have to make your priorities straight when you're in a crisis mode, and particularly the larger you get in a library system. I know it's kind of almost counterintuitive. The larger you get, the less flexibility you have in some ways. You think, well, you've got 4.8 million, Theresa. Are you telling me you can't do X, Y, and Z? I kind of am, because in order to create and maintain a collection that will meet the needs of 1 million people, it costs much more than you think. If any one of you all have looked into pricing for, we'll just do an example of ebooks or e-audio, you know that the cost that is being charged to us via Overdrive or whomever is getting the content for us from the publisher. It's crazy. Yes, Bernard, it's crazy expensive, and that's the thing of of trying to make the best decisions. You don't want to roll out a new service and then instantly have to meter it. I mean, that's not what we want to do. But anyway, I digress. I tend to do that. So here we go. So here's where I just wanted to talk with you about something that we here in Wake County call the book model, okay? So when we were in the financial crisis, and I put it in there, we realized that building and maintaining our book collection, we had to do it. But at the same time, at the time it was 2.8 million, and it was cut in half to 1.4 in 1 year, boom. And yes, I know for those of you all that are familiar with smaller or more rural libraries, you're like, oh yeah, like, cry me a river. I know, but for a county this size, that was really hard. And the reason we had to do that was, unlike some other library systems that unfortunately, laid off people, we didn't have that option. We were told by Wake County government, and I'm glad, you're not going to close libraries, you're not going to lay off people, you're not going to run your libraries, using volunteers. You're just going to have to take it out of that book budget. And that was a very hard process to go through. So the book model was created in our attempts to have a better answer to the age-old question of how much money do you need? If you ask the majority of public library directors in this state or anywhere really, how much money you need? You know what your answer is going to be? More than what I got. And while that might be true, that in no way is a business way to answer it. More and more the people that run our hold on, during annotation. Okay, sorry, I just got something up there. Our funding authorities, they are, in many ways, the boards and et cetera, they're filled with people that, have accounting degrees, have business degrees, have MBAs. It's very important for us to answer that question better. So what we did is we created, and I use the word we, oops, hold on, there we go, we very loosely. We was not I. We was, I had some ideas, but the whole statistical model that was created was another person's beautiful baby. But in order to meet this question and deal with this crisis, and to show them the impact of this is what happens when you cut a library's budget in half, we created this book model. And so the questions that we wanted to answer through this model is, what should the size of our book collection be? We went through a lot of data, state library data, national data. We looked at the size of collections of peer libraries the same size as us. We also looked at our own collection sizes during what we felt were periods of affluence or good budget years. Did a whole variety of stuff, and through that created what we thought would be an ideal size of our book collection. And what we came up with was right about 1.7 million items. At the time that we wrote this, oh, you're on your phone, it's giving me weird messages. I don't know. Kevin, excuse me, Professor, would you, I think there's somebody having audio problems, but I'm not sure how to fix it. I'm gonna keep rolling. So the first question was, what should the size be? We felt, after doing all this data, I'm totally spelling this for you, I realize.
I'll take care of it.
1.7.
Sorry
Well,
about
I'm sorry.
This is Dr. Washburn. I'm back, so I'll take care of the issue.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. When I try to mute myself so that I don't have any background noise either.
Sure thing. Thank
So,
you.
thank you.
Okay. The second thing is, what are the underlying differences between different types of books that determine cost? Okay. So when you talk with people about collection development or how they do selection, often librarians focus on the content of the book, or the audience for that matter. We want to make sure we have a certain number of adult fiction. We want to make sure we have a certain number of picture books, board books, etc. But what we found was that when in terms of pricing and costs, the things that differentiated books had less to do with its content and more to do with its format. So what we decided to do was group our type of books for this model in things like adult hardback, adult paperback, large print. Large print costs, tends to cost more. The audio book, the board book, the picture book. Then we grouped a couple of things like for the juvenile, juvenile hardback, juvenile paperback. Those included both fiction and nonfiction, and we kind of created some averages. But that's what we found was the best way to approach, from the money side of things, how much money do you need? We then had to do, oh, there's my sister. We then had to basically decide, what do we want our ideal book collection to look like? For us, like I said, excuse me, Wake County places a very high emphasis on children and children's services. We have half of our budget dedicated to children's books. Half of our collection is children's books. More than half of our circulation is for children's books. So what we had to do was say, okay, if our collection is 100%, what percentage should be youth and adult? Well, then we basically kind of made it a 49%, 51. And then within that, we basically said, so for the youth collection, of that 49%, how much percent should be picture books? How much should be board books? And we did a percentage of that. Then we combined that with what we saw our ideal book collection overall size. Remember that 1.7 million? And we basically laid out what our ideal collection should be in terms of number of volumes and the cost. So in addition to the purchasing piece, what this model also did was it took our data of, how long a book lasts in our system, how many circulations does it get before it gets gone, or other factors that either hasten or prolong its demise with us. And he actually, God bless him, he created this beautiful graph that showed, he called it the book decay, and I was like, please don't call it a book decay. He was not a librarian. He was very much an MBA kind of guy, but he was fabulous. Loved working with him. He actually got an award for the book model. I think it was North Carolina County Commissioners, something of that nature, but he's fabulous. Jason Horton, lovely guy, love him. So anyway, he created this lovely graph to kind of show that, yeah, your board books tend to, the majority of them, if you buy them on this date, in 3 years, most of them are gone because, of a variety of reasons, chewing, etc. Your adult fiction, though, will last longer. And so we did that for each of those kind of things. And then so after sort of creating that ideal collection and putting in when they depreciate, then we basically said, okay, what do we really have right now? Ideal aside, we plugged in the numbers for all those categories, and we basically saw where we were, and then we were able to place it alongside the ideal, which again was pretty much our goal. And so that's how the book model sort of came to be. And so it truly, what it wound up showing us was that we need a book collection of 1.7 million. At the time, it also, because it put in, we calculated costs, average costs for each of the books, and this was based on actual orders, so it wasn't just, grabbing out, $20 a book. It was actual costs, not only for the book, but for processing, because we do get our books fully processed. Believe it or not, was sort of less of an issue. Once you got your funding authorities, and for us, that was the county manager and the county commissioners, once you got them to understand the process that you went through to get to your 1.7 million number, and for them to understand how you got to your ideal book collection and why that was important, then really the money piece was just numbers. It became less about asking for money and more about asking for a robust collection to meet the needs of 1 million plus people. So that's how that worked out. So just a couple of, like I said, points about our book model that I wanted to talk about. What it bought us, really, like I just said, they were really very pleased with how business-like and objective as possible that this was. We gave them all of our research and we showed everything. And because of this, we were able to get 3 years of capital money infusions to supplement our annual operating budget. And so we always, our director, Mike Waslick, always like, they weren't going to propose marriage just yet, but you know, we were dating exclusively. We were beyond the blind date. You know, they didn't want to commit to putting money into our operating budget, which, if you all have already covered this or not, but you know, you've got your operating budget, which is your annual budget. Capital money is tied to either a particular project or event that is less tied to a calendar year and more to a project. So in essence, what they did was they said, well, I'm still going to give you 1.4 in your operating because I don't want to commit to always giving you that, because really, once something is in your operating, it is very hard to get it out of your operating. So they were like, I'm going to give you these 1.4 a year infusions. This happened 2 years after the downturn. So they gave us 3 years of capital money infusions. So that was an awesome thing. So together we had 2.8. It made for some interesting tracking in terms of the budget lines in our ILS, but we did it and we were happy about it. But what it also bought us was that, you know, after using this model for several years, moving to creating annual RFPs, which you all know is a request for proposal. That's pretty much where you basically put out, and some people call it putting out a bid. You basically say, this is the content that we want, this is how much of it we're going to get, probably here's about how much money we're going to spend. We put that out on the street. Pretty much for us, I'm not sure what it's like for other library systems, but there's kind of only 2 vendors that can meet all of our needs. That's either Baker and Taylor or Ingram. We love them both. They're both fabulous. And so using the model, moving to annual RFPs, and, oh my word, you don't even want to get me started talking about this. I get really excited. The deselection process, I get very excited about that. They did, you know, pony up, and they got us that ring in 2016, and they restored in operating our book budget, which was really a huge success, and we were very, very pleased with that. So, you know, you got a model, and then you've got, okay, really, what's it like in real life? So we started in fiscal year 14. We made a lot of educated guesses, and we were upfront that they were educated guesses. We actually called them assumptions, and I know that whole joke about don't make assumptions, you know, blah, 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 because what that does. But for us, we actually said, here are our assumptions. Our assumption is we want a book collection of 1.7 million. Our assumption is here's the percentage breakdown of how we want our books, the makeup of our books. Here's the assumption of these are our current costs for books. We'll add in X percentage for inflation if necessary, yada, yada, and all that kind of stuff. So we did create guesses, but they were based in either historical data that we've kept, our circulation stats, because that's kind of how we created our ideal collection. I mean, for heaven's sake, buy what people are going to want to check out. We did also do a lot of census information to see, make sure our population numbers were correct. And then just also encounters with all of our library staff, with the public, kind of what they're hearing and telling us when we see them in our libraries. Truly, this is a living process, and it works best when these assumptions are challenged. That's something else that I think we don't get taught enough in any kind of learning environment, to be quite honest with you, or at least it wasn't the case for me, is that it's very important to learn to disagree, and to disagree obviously respectfully and well. And because you disagree with someone, it is not challenging their authority, it's not trying to do a one-up or anything like that. It truly is, hold on, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. something like this has to have people at the table that are willing to perhaps feel a little uncomfortable to kind of go, I realize everyone else in this room thinks this is a great idea. I'm not so sold on that, and here's why. That's a life skill that's really important in general, but for this, it truly is very important. Otherwise, it's stagnant, and that just defeats the entire purpose. I know, Erica, I work on it too. This was also something that we, again, in full transparency for our funding authorities, for the county manager and for the county commissioners, we really needed to tell them, look, this is our starting point. This is a long-term project. And because we started it in a crisis period, you know, remember our budget had been cut, all this other kind of things, we were doing the best we could, but we knew we needed 3 to 5 years, honestly, of low volatility in terms of funding, and also books depreciating normally, not getting a big infusion of money and buying a whole bunch of books 1 year to turn around 5 years later and go, why are we getting rid of so many books? Because they're all worn out. Y'all bought a bunch, 5 years ago. We really had to be aware that and be very clear up front that this is not a quick fix. This is definitely a long-term commitment. So, and again, I really want to stress here that this is about book quantity and book cost, not quality, although obviously that is important. But this is not our collection development plan, I guess is what I'm saying. This is a financial model that helps us predict what our budget should be. It's a vehicle for us to communicate with our funding authorities to say, based on everything, that all the assumptions, remember, that we all agreed to, this is what we need. Are you gonna provide it or not? And sort of use that as the conversation. The whole idea of librarians using their skills to select the best books, that is a completely that's the art, of librarianship, and that is different from this. And it is important to make that distinction for sure. So these are the things that I wish I could tell you more about, which I can. Yes, I know, Jared. It was very important to include non-library folks, for sure. And that's really, I tell you, that was one of those things that while it was going on, it promoted the gray hairs, but I wouldn't do it any other way, because if you can get the buy-in and engagement of people that you work with that are not library people, if you can convey your story to them and get them to participate in the solution, that's what it's all about. It truly is. It's very important to have that in place. So these are the things I wish I could tell you more about, and I say that because, in my opinion, this all ties into, how you allocate budgets, how you create, spending plans. We call them purchasing plans here, etc. So we can go into these if you choose. If not, it's perfectly fine. Book selection and maintenance must be tied directly to book deselection and disposal. Again, so this is something else that we started just right after we started with the book model financial plan. And this was getting at the whole idea. Remember how I told you that he created those beautiful graphs that showed the decay, or the, how quickly you lose books, how quickly books in various collections leave your collection. We started on this path because, honestly, prior to this happening in 2012, 2013, 2014, all of our libraries did probably very similar to what many libraries do, is that every library location pulls books based on perhaps their own criteria, maybe it was a system criteria, but nevertheless, they were pulling them off their shelves and they were weeding those books. We did the same thing. That we completely changed that. Now anything that is deselected from our collection is actually sent here to library administration. It's done through a variety of things. It's done through reports that get at relevancy, those dusty books, books that we only have 1 or 2 copies of, which we can talk about later too, because we have this thing about minimum quantities here at Lake County because of our population. They also, obviously, they are empowered to make decisions based on the condition of the book, the physical condition. But the actual practice of reviewing something, comparing it against a set of, once again, agreed upon criteria that gets very granular, believe you me. You know, talk to me about water damage and how many pages it has to have in order for it to be pulled from our collection. I could sing a song about it, my God. But that's the process that we went to, and we did that for a variety of reasons. We knew that with the book model, we are asking for a ton of money. And we wanted to anticipate the next question, which was, okay, but for the books that you've got, the books that you're buying, how do we know that you are keeping the right books on the shelves and you're not getting rid of books that before their time? Is pretty much what it was. So it's really important to, I call it the book life cycle. It's really important to, when you are thinking about building or maintaining your collection, it really has to tie into, okay, well then how am I going to make sure that my deselection and disposal processes are transparent, people without a library degree can understand them, and they're based in as objective information as possible and not subjective. I'm just getting rid of these books because I really can't stand that person or that subject. No, no, no. It has to be based on circulation data. It has to be based on just a variety of things, which I know you all know, but I think sometimes we get very excited about buying books and not as excited about getting rid of books. And you have to have both in order for it to be a vibrant and relevant collection. Otherwise, you know, you're not, in my opinion, you're not meeting the needs of your community. You're just basically a repository that never gets purged. Oh gosh, I wish I could tell you more about collection breadth and depth. We talk about that here a lot. So, you know, the book model is all about quantities, right? And how much books cost and how many books you can buy, that 1.7. That doesn't get into, so for a population of 1 million, how many copies of a adult fiction debut should you get? How many copies of a picture book should you get, knowing that you've got 140 kids programs for the 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 age group? How many of those do you get? You don't want to just have one. You don't want to just have one per location. We have locations that have really, really, you know, vibrant and people that just check out books left and right. We have other libraries that it's less so. The problem we ran into, the first response to when our book budget was cut back in 2008. This is before I got into the position. I was still doing IT, so I kind of got to watch it from the outside, and it was fascinating. The first approach to dealing with that cut was to just buy fewer copies of a book. We were trying to maintain the notion that, you know, I can still give out them all the titles they want, but instead of buying 19 copies, 30 copies, what I'm going to buy 10. I'm going to buy 10. I'm going to buy 5. I'm going to buy 7. As long as we've got it. I heard that so many times, and I really strongly encourage you all to not fall into a trap of, but at least we have a copy. Because the longer you work in public libraries, the more you realize that people, whether they want to or not, are hard on books. And if you're buying 5 copies of a book, not only are your hold lists or your request time periods extended, but those books wear out faster. And so truly we were not doing a good service to our customers by continuing to have, you know, hundreds of titles and just fewer copies. It wasn't meeting their needs, and it was actually really frustrating. So what we had to do is we had to flip it and go, look, choose the best 10 books that are out there and buy copies to meet demand. Buy copies so that somebody doesn't have to wait months to get the book, because then that speaks to relevancy again. Especially now, if I can click on Amazon and buy it in Prime and, you know, the little guy coming up, you know, the day of, you know, it is in many ways, at least in our community, it's about convenience. And so we flipped it. But I tell you, it's not a black or white issue. It's a whole lot of gray. And it has to be a conversation that you have, and then you revisit, and then you revisit. Because when we started the book model, because we had to plug in numbers, you know, of how many books, we had to basically say, if this is 1.7, this means X number of titles and X number of copies. And because of that, we had to say, okay, we know, for example, beginning reader, or some people call them easy readers. It's those early chapter books before juvenile fiction. Those circulate like hotcakes. We've got to keep those numbers up. So we would literally purchase, I think right now we're up to 59 copies. Why not 60, you say? Oh, I'll tell you later, it's a distribution grid. But anyway, we buy a whole bunch of beginning readers because we know those will circulate. We also initially bought, I think, 19 or 20 copies of any young adult fiction book. Young adult fiction is phenomenal. It's great. The publishing is, you know, booming. But unfortunately, in our libraries, we haven't kept up with that in terms of how much shelving space we allot to young adult. Furthermore, young adult is like adult fiction on steroids in terms of it is popular now. Oh my God, I wouldn't be caught dead even holding that book this time next year. So it is very hard to have a long-range plan with such a dynamic collection. And yes, I love YA too. I think it's wonderful. I even have one of our librarians, she's the manager at Cameron Village Library, Megan Roberts. If any of you know her, she's absolutely fabulous, and she loves her some YA fiction, let me tell you. But that's all to say that the minimum quantities for that collection we really have to be very careful about. We probably overdid it, and in fact, I will say we overdid that. Remember I was talking about mistakes we made? We overdid it, because what happened was we would be purchasing these and then we would be getting them sent back to us because we don't have any room on the shelf, there's not enough shelves, there's, you know, or I've got too many copies of this, and it was just very hard to, because the circulation patterns were different. You have to take that into account when you are talking about your minimum quantities for books. So that's all to say for that piece. Please don't undersell your collection and make every book earn their keep. I have worked in public library systems where, honestly, books were bought because they should be bought. And I'm not saying that we don't purchase some books because they get starred reviews and they get awards. But the vast majority of books that we buy, and what we buy in large quantities, are popular reading materials. We are not an academic library. We're not a special library. That's what we do. And if we don't buy it, we obviously make sure that interlibrary loan, we have a lot of interlibrary loan to catch the sort of those niche, or if you want to call it the long tail, you know, all those other topics or titles that people want that honestly, it just can't rise to the top of what we're able to buy. So that's really important. And again, just not being a museum, making sure that your collection does turn over, and if it doesn't turn over, do something about it. And really put your money where your circulation is. This is not to say that you are only catering to the lowest common denominator, or, you know, all you buy are Pattersons and Grishams. Nope, that's not what we're saying at all. But there is a definite way for selectors who have the tools in front of them and the skills and expertise to be able to select titles that do have the buzz. I mean, our selectors listen to NPR all the time. They are aware of all the talk shows that come on. They know when something is going to hit, and they buy it. But they don't have the flexibility, even with their budget, to be able to go out and look at all the self-published titles. We just can't. I mean, Create Spaces is wonderful, but if something isn't professionally reviewed on Amazon, and I'm kind of going down a little rabbit hole, but it's important. You owe it to your taxpayers, and for those of you that are looking to you to make the best use of your county resource, in our case, our county resource, you've got to be very sure about the books that you're buying. This is not to say you don't take risks. There are always sleepers. It's great. We do take chances on debuts a lot. I personally love debuts. That's when we get, you know, our advanced reader copies, and we're like, oh yeah, we got to get this. So it's not to say that we're locked into quantities. There is flexibility there. But if you don't have a baseline, and if you're kind of just getting stuff without a real understanding of why you buy certain quantities, it opens you up for, I guess it elevates your risk of being seen as not running like a business, but rather running more just based on subjective information as opposed to objective data. I think if there was one thing that going through the book model process taught us, because again, it involved a lot of people that were not in libraries. It involved finance and a lot of other people in administration. It taught us that we were making changes not because anyone did anything wrong. You know, for the years before this happened, there were amazing librarians here making wonderful choices, making the best choices, doing everything they could to get the best cost, the best, you know, processing everything, getting it turned around and out the door to the customers. That was all happening. But when it happens in a vacuum, when it is not transparent to anyone outside of your organization, you do put yourself at risk. And so you truly do need to think about ways to engage others so that it's not just you trying to tell your story. They're telling your story for you. Our greatest advocates are the community services operations director. This is a woman that's, you know, MBA'd up. You know, she is all about the counting of the beans. She is our greatest advocate, and that's wonderful to get that kind of partnership involved, because then it just makes things a lot easier. So that's what I have, Professor. Was that what you wanted? I hope so. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's me, by the way. I don't hear you yet, so you're welcome, Dave. Thank you. So let me do this. I'll say end slideshow, and that was what happens then. Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay, you did an excellent job. I think this is fantastic. I was thoroughly impressed with the way that you tied in all the different budget strategies to be able to help students understand that these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. There really are a lot of different factors that go into play with that. And so I think for me, having worked in the public library, it's a lot of the language that I'm familiar with, but I really feel very strongly that the students today walk away with a great perspective about the world of the public library. And I appreciate the fact that you did mention that public libraries are not repositories. They're living organisms that serve their communities. They're very much focused on the work that we did in the class in the environmental scan. That's part of the evidence of that, is that it really does show how that community needs the library. So.
Indeed. And know what your mission is, and get your collection to support that. Your collection should support your overall program of service. And when you're able to do that, and you're able to really articulate the value of the library, the unique value of the library, it makes the library become less of a social services organization and more of a learning education organization, which is truly, I feel that's our role. In Wake County, that's our role. We have human services. We have a lot of other organizations. Again, not all places are like that, but for us, it's very important for us we feed the mind. You know, we want to feed the mind. That's what we went to school for. You know, we want to put good books in your hands. That's what we do.
And so just as kind of like a way to close out our discussion today, because most of our purchases, even now, still focus on the paper arrangement. And so we're very blessed in North Carolina to have NC Live available to provide us the ton of digital content. But how do you see that continuing to inform and shape your role as a So, you know, as a manager of all these resources, especially the digital components of it.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, NC Live is wonderful because we have been able to reallocate money that we used to spend on things like Reference USA or other, you know, the language learning. I think we're not doing Mango anymore. We're doing Pronunciator, one of the two. NC Live is wonderful, and I loved working with Tim Rogers before he went to, I think, now he's in Florida. Loved working with them. They have a very tough job in convincing or continuing to convince, you know, state legislature that this is something very important to fund. It's a very hard case to make, and I know that they have done a lot of efficiencies, and they've really kind of gone at the whole idea of what can we bring to libraries that they cannot bring for themselves. And I think that that's phenomenal. For e-content outside of something like a database, with the exception of the children's collection, which is a shared collection also, we participate in that. A lot of consortiums are not available to us because we are too big, and so we truly have to rely on our own operating budget to fund e-content for our library system. Again, we are presented with a challenge. You need to make sure that the measures that you're using, whatever measures you agree upon and your funding authorities agree upon to indicate success, that your budget and your collections need to reflect that. And when I say that, I mean we're actually in a transition period. Like I said a couple years ago, and we still are, building libraries. So having people in our buildings coming for a program, checking out books, etc., is very important. What we're hoping to transition into is taking that, so right now our visitation number, that's one of our most important key indicators for success. We've got door counters on all of our facilities. You know, they're not perfect, they're a laser. We're kind of getting them updated so that they don't count a whole group of people as challenges. But visitation is very important. We're looking to find a way to transition a key indicator to be card-holding households. If we can make that transition to say, look, visitation is great and wonderful, and we love having our libraries, and that continues to be a good investment, weight counting. But we also feel that we really want to saturate our market, and we want the number of houses with an active library card, and we define active, actually we define it pretty stringently. We say if we've seen you in the past year. We don't go out much longer than that. But what we say is if we want to have X percentage of our population household having an active library card, well then you know what, that does open the door for us to be able to focus more on e-content, perhaps give more budget in that area. But we can't jump to that piece without first agreeing on what our success indicators are. So that requires a whole lot of conversations. It requires a lot of patience. Because there's many times where I've just wanted to go, oh, for heaven's sake, let's just buy more, you know, fill in the blank. You know, I don't have to shelve it. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't depreciate, yada, yada, whatever you want to say. You know, let's just do it. But that would be putting the cart before the horse. I mean, you really do have to plan for making it successful. Additionally, so what I'm doing in the meantime, so while I'm waiting on the conversations to come to fruition about, hey, are we going to go with active card-holding households? It allows me to then go, okay, what are my goals with e-content anyway? I mean, and let's be real, I can't compete with retail. I can't. And while it is important, and I do believe it's part of our mission to provide digital content to those that aren't able to utilize fully the retail model, it's still really important to take into account, like we said earlier, the cost associated with it. I don't want to, like I said, promise something, create an expectation, and not be able to meet it. And it's very hard with the digital content. The cost is a barrier, for sure. And so that's something else that I have to kind of figure out, what kind of a collection do I want? Do I want it to just reflect popular materials? And if that's the case, then I'm not getting the, I'm not getting everything. Even if for example, a whole bunch of romance titles that aren't top tier, aren't bestsellers, but hey, you can get them for 99 cents each. Why don't you just get some of those? Well, you could. Is that going to get you the outcome that you want, though? So there's just like a lot of questions that you have to ask and really kind of understand what your goals are for e-content before just kind of diving in and buying stuff, I guess.
Well, I think that's fantastic. So I'm quickly scrolling through to see if there were any other questions that I missed, or if students had presented anything. I noticed that you were catching them as they were coming along, that you were really answering all the different, or responding to the different queries from students about things that they liked or that they had experienced themselves. So excellent job. You really kept up with the technology this evening.
Oh, well, hey, hooray! Hey, yeah, I managed IT for 12 years. I tell you what, it's pretty funny. My sweetheart, who really does technology, works at NetApp. It's pretty funny. We have conversations, and he looks at me and goes, "Really? You really managed the IT department for 12 years?" I'm like, yes, I did. But I'm a librarian at heart, so I'm kind of clicking all over the place. So I'm glad. And I tell you what, Professor, if you and your class want to do anything more with any of those other pieces that I was talking about, deselection, more into the book model, whatever, I'm happy to talk with you all. Also, what I'll do is I'll actually forward you a copy of the book model as it looks now, so that you can actually see how it breaks down. I was going to share a screen and kind of show that, but I think it'd be best for folks to be able to,
a lot of excitement.
Magnify it on their own.
Yeah, you can see people snapping in on the chat. They're very excited about that opportunity. So
yeah.
So definitely send that to us.
Don't expect me to replicate it for you, because, like I told you, it wasn't my baby, but it's an Excel. It's a Mac Daddy Excel with a whole lot of pivots, but it will give you an understanding of, like I said, how we broke down the collection, where you can see the pricing, you can see all that other kind of stuff. So it puts some details into something that can be very nebulous, for sure, when you're talking about collection development and budgeting, for sure.
Well, we have been so blessed to have you with us this evening. I am thrilled that you joined us. On behalf of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, I want to thank you for your time and energies, and for helping us to continue to promote the profession, and working with these emerging practitioners who one day will probably, one or two of them, or maybe several of them, might be working for you or with you.
That'd be awesome. We're growing. Now I'm saying we're hiring all the time. We're definitely we're doing well. So yeah. So if you want more information on anything, just funnel that through your professor, and Dr. Washburn will just be in touch, and you just let me know what else you might need. Yeah.
Well, I did share your email address with them, so they might
totally.
They might contact you directly.
Yeah. That sounds wonderful.
Well, thank you again for being with us.
Oh, Cameron Village. Yeah, I love Cameron Village too.
Yep.
But I like all our other ones too. Hey, you really need to go to like Northeast Regional. It's got even prettier windows.
Yeah.
Overlooks the river. Quite lovely.
Yeah. Oh, and
thank you, Dr. Washburn.
Don't forget, I'm planning to come to visit you soon.
Yes, that would be delightful. That would be loads of fun.
It'll be in probably the middle of April, and I'll let you know in advance.
Cool. Sounds good. Oh, hey, y'all, here's something else, too. It's the selfless promotion. The first week of May, we have our annual book sale, which is huge, because we didn't even talk about that, donations, good God. We get a bunch. I'm glad you love the book sale. It's happening from the May 2nd through the 5th. We're opening on Thursday at noon till 9, and then through Sunday, 9 to 9, 9 to 9, and then Sunday we might sell out again. I mean, it's kind of crazy. We have over 200,000 items that we're bringing to the state fairgrounds. But love to have you there. Hey, you want to volunteer? Just go to our website. We've got a link for you. You can sign up and be a volunteer as well if you wish. But
that's great.
That would be wonderful.
Well,
cool.
So for students that are in the class, this is of course the end of our class for this evening. Just stay tuned. We will pick up with the next module next week. And then again, reminder to Team F to send me your link for your presentation this week. Unless there's any other comments or questions, everyone have a good night.
See y'all.
Okay. Thanks again there. Okay. If you're wanting to talk to me, I'm still available. Any students that's still in the room? Vinny, are you needing to speak with me? Vinny, do you need to speak with me? Have a good night.